After my husband woke up from the car accident, his mind was completely scrambled. Every day, he repeated hundreds of times that he had been reincarnated. He kept apologizing to me. He said that in his past life, he cheated on me and blindly trusted the other woman. Not only did he betray my genuine love, but he also caused me to die with resentment. He even said that I refused to forgive him until my dying breath. After saying that, he slapped himself 3 times and burst into tears. I held him in my arms while exchanging bewildered looks with the shareholders gathered in the hospital room. Outwardly, I remained calm, but inside, I was dying of embarrassment. I had been in an arranged marriage with Jianxi for 5 years, and our relationship had always been lukewarm. He was deeply absorbed in his work every day, fulfilling his role as a successful, domineering CEO. He disliked social engagements and preferred eating at home, so I would personally cook for him every day. Everything related to his daily life and routine, I took care of myself. In a sense, we respected each other and lived like polite strangers. I had thought life would continue this way, but Jianxi got into a car accident on a stormy day. After he woke up, his mind seemed broken. He was adamant that he had been reincarnated. When I rushed to the hospital, Jianxi's beautiful head was wrapped in layers of bandages, and he was acting crazy in the hospital room. He had ripped the IV needle out of his hand and was struggling desperately to get out of bed, trying to go home. "Get out of my way! I want to go home! I need to find Yan Yan! Don't touch me! I need to go home and find Yan Yan!" It took 3 nurses to barely hold him down. I walked up quickly, my face dark with frustration, and grabbed him. "Stop it!" He paused for 2 seconds when he saw me, and then his eyes suddenly turned red. He pulled me into his arms, his voice trembling. "Yan Yan, it's good that you're all right. It's good that you're all right. I missed you so much." I used all my strength to push him away, but he didn't budge an inch. Barely able to catch my breath, I said, "If you don't let go, I'm about to not be all right." Finally, Jianxi let me go, but his face was filled with extreme grievance. I pretended not to notice. I directed him to lie down in bed and asked the nurse to reinsert the IV. After a long ordeal, it was just the 2 of us left in the room. He leaned against the headboard, his eyes fixed on me the whole time. Even when I went to the bathroom to wash my hands, he called out for me several times. Even the aunties at the market couldn't call out as much as he did. I sat on the edge of the bed, peeling an orange for him. Suddenly, he looked at me with deep affection and said, "Yan Yan, I really missed you." My hand paused in the middle of peeling, and I furrowed my brow. Could Jianxi have been hit so hard that he became brain damaged? We had known each other for over 10 years and had been married for 5. This was the first time I'd ever heard him say something so cheesy. I reached out to touch his forehead. "Let me call the doctor." But Jianxi grabbed my hand, his voice clear. "I'm not sick, Yan Yan. I've been reincarnated." Me. I was certain my expression must have been incredibly colorful at that moment, but Jianxi didn't care at all. He was full of conviction. "Yan Yan, I'm serious. I really was reincarnated. In my previous life, I cheated. Not only did I betray you, but I also let the other woman humiliate you. When you were sick, I even made you kneel in the rain as punishment. I embarrassed you in front of everyone, and I made you donate a kidney to that woman. I did so many things that hurt you. Eventually, you were utterly disappointed in me. You got cancer and passed away." My face had turned pale, but Jianxi kept going. "I regretted it. I tried to find you. I searched for you desperately, but you didn't want to see me. You wouldn't speak to me. I didn't even know where you were buried. Yan Yan, I truly deserve to die." With that, he started slapping himself and broke down in tears. When the company's senior executives and shareholders came to visit, this was the scene they walked in on. The usually cold and expressionless Jianxi curled up in my arms, crying like a fool. While sobbing, he kept repeating, "I really deserve to die." I stayed calm on the surface, gently soothing Jianxi while telling the shareholders to come back another day. But inside, I was already dying of embarrassment. It took him a full hour to calm down, by which time a large patch of my shirt was soaked. I glanced at him. "Were you possessed by Meng Jiangnu?" Jianxi pretended not to hear, holding my hand tightly, his eyes filled with affection. "Yan Yan, I love you." Please stay by my side forever. I shook off his hand and stood up to change my clothes. All right, I get it. Out of his sight, I quietly curled my lips into a smile. Jianxi wasn't seriously hurt, and after staying in the hospital for a few days, he returned home. However, his entire personality drastically changed. Previously, this house was nothing more than a place for him to eat and sleep, occasionally fulfilling his duties as a husband. But now, no matter where I went, he followed me. Even when I went to the bathroom, he would wait by the door. It was truly exhausting. The 13th time I chased him out of the kitchen, Jianxi looked at me pitifully and said, "Yan Yan, before you left last time, you made me my favorite sweet and sour ribs." Me. I held the spatula, feeling an urge to crack open his head and see exactly where that extra love brain had grown. By now, I could recite everything about his life before reincarnation backwards. I pretended not to hear him and focused on the ribs in the pan. Jianxi pressed up against me from behind, placing his hands on my waist, his voice hoarse. "Yan Yan, I'm hungry." I glanced at him. "It'll be ready soon. Go wait outside." But Jianxi didn't listen. His kisses fell like a storm, landing on my forehead, my temples, my cheeks, and my lips. "Yan Yan, I love you!" Surrounded by Jianxi's clean and pleasant scent, I pushed him away. "The ribs are going to burn. If they burn, we won't eat them. Yan Yan, having you is enough." Jianxi turned off the stove, scooped me up, and carried me back to the bedroom. Jianxi had never been this passionate before. He was like a traveler in a desert, desperately seeking an oasis, crashing forward recklessly without regard for anything. As my vision blurred, I raised my hand to touch the small scar behind Jianxi's ear. It was so tiny that even Jianxi himself hadn't noticed it. By now, it had scabbed over. Only I knew that beneath that scar lay a chip. A chip that made Jianxi believe he was in love with me. 4 years ago, I invested in a research institute that was on the brink of bankruptcy. In addition to researching treatments for difficult diseases, they were also developing a memory chip. This chip didn't actually change or create new memories, but rather set a premise for the person implanted with it, amplifying a specific emotion. The chip would stimulate the brain to treat that emotion as if it were a real memory. As for the details unrelated to the emotion, the chip would stimulate the brain to blur and fill in the gaps. Just like Jianxi's so-called reincarnation. He would only remember all his guilt and love for me, without recalling what else happened before his reincarnation. In the 5 years since I married Jianxi, although he had been rigid and dull and never showed much care for me, at least there had never been any other woman by his side. I originally thought we could continue like this. But starting last month, a woman had frequently appeared around Jianxi. They often met, had meals, and even talked on the phone late at night. Once, when I got up to drink some water, Jianxi saw me and hurriedly ended the call. So even domineering CEOs could feel guilty about cheating. Although the script I had written for Jianxi portrayed me as someone who wouldn't fight or make a fuss, in reality, I wasn't about to accept this. I staged a car accident and, during his treatment, had a chip implanted into him, altering his memories. I wanted him to be completely devoted to me. I've always known that I'm not mentally healthy. Since childhood, I've never been interested in anything, except for Jianxi. No one can take him away from me. He can only be mine, forever. I first met Jianxi when I was 13. My stepsister's 15th birthday was a grand affair, with all the high society of the capital attending. She wore the latest princess dress, flitting through the banquet hall, while I sat in the small garden, wearing a dress from 2 years ago. I caught a butterfly, but before I could get a good look at it, Zhao Wan snatched it away. "Zhao Yanyi, your dress is so ugly." She looked at me with a bright smile, but I only cared about the mess on the ground. The butterfly was dead, its wings torn apart. Its broken state reminded me of those dolls and princess dresses Zhao Wan and her mother had cut to pieces. And those paper stars thrown into the trash. I wasn't angry at all, just thinking about what I should put on Zhao Wan's bed today. A dead rat? Or maybe a live cockroach? The thought of Zhao Wan jumping in fright made me laugh out loud. She rushed over, ready to lash out, but then she saw Jianxi. At 15, Jianxi already had the aura of a future CEO, silent, cold, yet incredibly handsome. He wore a well-tailored little suit with a neat bow tie around his neck. Just by standing there, he commanded everyone's attention. Zhao Wan quickly greeted him in her coquettish way, but Jianxi simply said her mother was looking for her, so she ignored me and left. Jianxi remained standing there, motionless and silent. I glanced at the broken butterfly on the ground, lost interest, and walked away. 2 months later, I saw Jianxi again. In a quiet place where no one else was around, he handed me a small wooden frame. Inside was the butterfly I had caught, perfectly preserved, as if still alive. But to be exact, it had become a butterfly specimen. The frame was small, fitting perfectly in my palm. Jianxi still had that stoic expression, said nothing, and left after giving it to me. As I watched him walk away, I quietly tightened my grip on the butterfly in my hand. Jianxi, you came into the palm of my hand on your own accord. The next morning, when I woke up, Jianxi had just come out of the bathroom. The towel hung loosely around his waist, water droplets sliding down along the lines of his muscles. It was incredibly sexy. I stared absent-mindedly at the scar on his left chest. It wasn't until Jianxi's breath, mixed with the warmth of the steam, enveloped me that I snapped out of it. He pulled me out of the blankets, and the wet ends of his hair brushed against my neck, tickling me. I pushed him away, laughing. "Are you a puppy?" Jianxi completely ignored me, still burying his head against the side of my neck. "Yan, I really like you today too. Will you always stay by my side?" Ever since Jianxi woke up from the car accident, every day as soon as he opened his eyes, he would confess to me. It felt like I'd heard more confessions in the past few days than I had in the past 5 years. I patted the back of his head. "As long as you always love me, I'll always be here." Yan, remember what you just said. I responded casually, but my hand unconsciously traced the scar over his heart. "Does it hurt?" Jianxi froze for a moment, then hugged me even tighter. "It doesn't hurt." After half an hour of cuddling, Jianxi finally left for the company, glancing back at me every few steps. I watched his car drive out of the yard and disappear around the corner. I dialed the research institute, and they said Jianxi's chip data was functioning normally. Just after hanging up, Jianxi called again, asking if I wanted to see a movie that night. I wasn't particularly interested, but Jianxi began his incantation again. Yan, before my reincarnation, every time you asked me out, I always stood you up. Now, will you give me a chance? Let me atone for that. Me? Do you dislike me now? Don't you love me anymore? I sighed. All right, let's go. Satisfied, Jianxi hung up. After thinking it over, I called the research institute again to confirm that Jianxi's chip really wasn't infected by a virus. Actually, the script I gave to Jianxi wasn't detailed down to every small event, since the chip's storage capacity is limited. To make it work, I only needed a few key events that would trigger maximum emotional fluctuations, and the brain will automatically fill in the rest. But I really hadn't expected that. Despite how serious Jianxi seemed, his imagination would be this rich. These past few days, I've been getting so tired of hearing his constant proclamations. He's really become a love brain. Before the movie, Jianxi and I went for dinner. He asked if I wanted to travel abroad for our wedding anniversary next month. After all, since we got married, we had never traveled together, not even for our honeymoon. Jianxi was a workaholic. The day after our wedding, he flew to the US for a month-long business trip. By the time he returned, the excitement had long since faded. And as for past wedding anniversaries, he had mostly been working overtime. He would just instruct his assistant to order flowers and buy gifts for me, as a sort of gesture. Jianxi looked at me, his eyes warm. Yan, all the things we've missed before, we'll slowly make up for in the future. After dinner, we arrived at the cinema 10 minutes early, but even after the movie started, no one else came in. I couldn't help but feel puzzled. Isn't this movie pretty popular? Jianxi smiled. I booked the whole theater. Me? He looked at me deeply. I just wanted to watch it with you alone. I raised my hand and turned his head toward the screen. It's starting. Don't talk. I wasn't actually a big fan of watching movies, but today I found myself unusually focused. The movie was about a couple. The wife suffered from short-term memory loss, and every morning she would forget everything from the previous day. the husband would try to make her fall in love with him again, every single day. Maybe it was because I had never experienced such unwavering love, but I felt a sense of bittersweet ache in my heart. I turned my head to look at Jianxi, only to find that he had been leaning back in his seat, watching me the whole time. The theater was dark, and I couldn't make out the expression on his face. He leaned closer, whispering softly in my ear, "Yan Yan, if you forget me 100 times, I will love you 101 times." I knew he was under the influence of the chip, saying all sorts of promises and sweet nothings without hesitation, but this time, I couldn't find it in me to argue back. Instead, my heart was pounding intensely. It felt as if it was beating just for Jianxi. On our 5th wedding anniversary, Jianxi and I were preparing for a trip to Europe. During the day, he rushed through his work at the company, eager to finish everything he could ahead of time. At night, after returning home, he would stay in his study, making detailed travel plans, managing everything himself. I didn't have to worry about a thing. All I needed to do was one thing: be there with him, and I had to stay somewhere he could see me the moment he looked up. It was ridiculous. I curled up on the sofa, reading a novel, listening to the sound of Jianxi tapping away at the keyboard. Occasionally, I glanced over at him. His expression was stern, and if you didn't know any better, you'd think he was handling some critical project. I asked him, "Which countries are we visiting?" "France, Germany, Denmark, Finland, Sweden, Norway." I nodded, suddenly remembering something. "Is Zhao Wan still in Germany?" Jianxi froze for a moment. "Why are you asking about her all of a sudden?" I shook my head and continued reading. "It's nothing, she just crossed my mind." Jianxi looked at me for a while before the sound of typing resumed. But every now and then, his gaze would drift back toward me. For some reason, bringing up Zhao Wan always made me feel uneasy. But she and I had indeed lost contact a long time ago. 5 years ago, the Ji family, seeking to strengthen their business ties, began looking for a marriage alliance for Jianxi. Zhao Wan had liked him for a long time, bringing it up to my stepmother repeatedly. My stepmother had once been nothing more than a street vendor selling tofu pudding. It was only because she somewhat resembled my mother that she was able to bring her daughter into the Zhao family. However, after living in luxury for the past few years, her appetite for wealth had grown. At that time, the Ji family wasn't even worth her consideration. But Zhao Wan was insistent, so my stepmother eventually brought it up to my father. My father neither agreed nor refused. That night, I stormed into my father's study with a kitchen knife. I told him straight up that I wanted to marry Jianxi, and if he couldn't make it happen, we'd all die together. My father, being the absolute madman he was, didn't even flinch when he saw me like that. He just tossed out a simple "all right" and ordered me out of the room. Later, it was confirmed that I would marry Jianxi. Zhao Wan and my stepmother threw fits at home a few times. I watched their antics, finding it all rather amusing. My stepmother had been married to my father for over 10 years and still didn't understand just how insane he was. Such outbursts wouldn't bother him in the slightest. After all, he was the kind of man who didn't even blink when he saw my mother's dead body. In fact, just 2 months later, he had already found someone else to remarry. When their tantrums proved futile, Zhao Wan and my stepmother only escalated their efforts to target me. Once we were adults, their methods were no longer as simple as cutting a few pieces of clothing or slapping me around like they had when we were kids. At a banquet, they drugged me, planning to throw me to a few hired bodyguards. But their scheme was clumsy and easy to see through. After I caught on, I made sure Zhao Wan took my place. My stepmother stormed into the room with people to catch me in the act, only to find Zhao Wan in bed. She went crazy, trying to settle the score with me. But at that time, I was in Jianxi's car. Of course, I hadn't wasted the wine Zhao Wan had given me. I simply used it on the right person. After that incident, Zhao Wan couldn't stay in Beijing any longer. Before long, she was sent abroad. She missed my wedding, which was honestly a bit of a pity. Since Zhao Wan went abroad, we hadn't seen each other again. She hadn't even returned 3 years ago when the Zhao family's house caught fire, and both my stepmother and my father died in it. Sometimes I even wondered if she had already died abroad, but I didn't really care enough to find out. Whether she was alive or dead was none of my concern. A week before our anniversary, Jianxi and I arrived in France, planning to enjoy a few days here before heading off to Norway. This trip felt surreal. It was an experience unlike anything I had ever had in my life. Jianxi seemed genuinely happy too. He shed his usual stiff, formal, custom-made suits and wore matching couple outfits with me every day. Before we came, he had already prepared the clothes. I had no idea where he found so many sets of couple outfits. Not only were the styles wildly different, but each piece of clothing had our names on it. They were a bit trendy and slightly tacky at the same time, but I was really happy. Even though I had fulfilled my wish of marrying Jianxi in this life, I had never been in a real relationship. Back when I was in school, many people pursued me, but I had no interest in dating anyone other than Jianxi. However, I couldn't date Jianxi either, because he didn't like me. During this trip, though, I had the illusion that we were in the middle of a romantic relationship. We strolled hand in hand down the streets, taking breaks when we were tired. Sometimes, foreigners would compliment us, saying we looked perfect together. I had always thought Jianxi was a rigid and serious person. From the moment I met him, he had always been so proper and predictable. Even during the 5 years of our marriage, he always maintained a polite distance from me. But these past few days revealed a different side of him. He was an excellent photographer, and every photo he took of me turned out beautifully. He knew many languages, had a lovely singing voice, and once, when we came across a street performer, he even volunteered to play and sing a song. He was always smiling. The Paris sunset hung across his brow, and the way he looked at me felt like the warmth of an entire April breeze enveloping me. He said, "Yan Yan, I will love you forever." I don't know why, but at that moment I suddenly wanted to cry. Even though I didn't want to speak, I couldn't help but ask him, "Are you happy, Ashi?" For a brief moment, Jianxi's smile froze. In his gaze there was joy, sorrow, and disbelief all at once. Tears slipped from the corners of my eyes, and I grabbed his collar and kissed him. His hands trembled as he held me, his voice hoarse. "Yan Yan, you..." I didn't catch what he said next, because suddenly, the sound of gunfire erupted. The peaceful and quiet street instantly descended into chaos, with screams and cries for help filling the air. Jianxi and I were separated by the surging crowd. In the midst of the chaos, I saw him running toward me, and behind him was the dark barrel of a gun. At that moment, a surge of immense energy exploded from within me, pushing me to run toward him without hesitation. As the bullet pierced through my chest, countless memories flashed through my mind. I couldn't hear what Jianxi was saying, nor could I hear the noise around us. All I could remember was Jianxi repeatedly whispering in my ear, "I love you." He had said it so many times over so many years. I reached out and placed my hand over his left chest, as if I could feel the shape of the scar through his sweatshirt. I smiled at him and said, "Ashi, this time, it's finally my turn to protect you." I had always thought my first encounter with Jianxi was when I was 13 years old. But in fact, we had met 3 years earlier. Since childhood, I had no friends, and Jianxi was my first and only one. Unlike others, he didn't mock me for not having a mother or call my mother crazy. He was quiet and beautiful, though not very talkative. Once it rained, and I saw him standing under the school building, seemingly waiting for the rain to stop. I clutched the umbrella in my hand, walked over, and handed it to him. "I'll give you my umbrella. Can you be my friend?" Jianxi glanced at me, but didn't take the umbrella or say a word. I grew a little anxious, shoved the umbrella into his arms, and ran into the rain. I only had one umbrella. I wanted to use it to exchange for a friend. Since Jianxi had accepted my umbrella, he couldn't refuse me anymore, could he? The rain poured harder, and I had no choice but to find shelter under a roof. I wasn't in a hurry. If I came home late, the butler would come out to look for me. It just meant I'd see my mother a little later today. At my feet, a little cat slept peacefully. I squatted down and petted it to pass the time. I didn't know how Jianxi found me, but when he stood before me and the cat, holding my small floral umbrella, he looked very tall. "Zhao Yanya, aren't you going home?" I didn't reply. He tilted the umbrella slightly toward me. "Let's go, I'll walk you home." We were both just kids, small enough that one umbrella could easily cover both of us. By the time Jianxi walked me home, the rain had lightened considerably. I asked him, "Are we friends now?" He looked at me the same way, neither cold nor warm, and said, "Do you really need a friend that badly?" I lowered my head. "I don't have any friends." Jianxi was silent for a while, as if he sighed. "Well, then they have no taste. Don't be sad. From now on, we'll be good friends." I beamed with joy, ran inside, and grabbed a pile of my favorite snacks. But by the time I came back out, Jianxi was already gone. I planned to give them to him tomorrow. After washing up and changing my clothes, I went upstairs to that locked room. That's where my mother was. I wasn't a child without a mother. My mother was beautiful, gentle, and loved me very much. She would dry my hair for me and braid it too. My mother was the best mother in the world. When I pushed the door open, my mother was sitting by the window, staring into space. When she saw me, she smiled. She picked up the towel beside her and walked down from the window, the chain on her ankle making a jingling sound. "Why didn't you dry your hair again? Little one, you'll get sick if you do that." The chain on my mother's ankle was short, only allowing her to move within the room. I hurried over, feeling a bit guilty. "I'm not cold. I just wanted to see you sooner." My mother pulled me into her arms and gently dried my hair with the towel. I told her about the new friend I made today. When I was with my mother, she didn't talk much. It was always me chattering away. She said she liked listening to me talk about my day, though I always had too much to say and never finished in time. Today was no different. I had only gotten halfway through when the butler knocked on the door. It was time for me to leave. Father had set a rule that I could only spend half an hour with my mother each day. I was reluctant to go, but my mother smiled as she watched me. "See you tomorrow, my darling." Clumsily, I climbed down, slowing, but then I caught sight of her ankle. There was a new circle of wounds there, and blood had stained the hem of her long skirt. Mother must have struggled again today. I gently placed my hand on her pale, slender ankle. "Mom, does it hurt?" My mother patted my head but said nothing. My voice quivered as I held back tears. "Mom, please don't struggle anymore." She smiled softly and said, "All right." Back then, I didn't understand anything. I just wished for her not to be hurt, not to feel pain. But I never considered what that would mean for her. The year I turned 10 was the happiest year of my life. There was Jianxi, and there was my mother. During that time, Jianxi would wait for me after school every day so we could walk home together. I would bring him different kinds of snacks and small gifts. Because my mother always said that good things should be shared with friends. Jianxi didn't talk much, but whenever he overheard someone saying I didn't have a mother, he would rush over and start a fight with them. Jianxi fought fiercely, but I wasn't afraid of him, because he was never like that when he was with me. Jianxi was my friend, and he was also my knight. Every day, I would chatter endlessly in front of my mother, and in every story I shared, Jianxi would appear. My mother would always listen with a smile, then comment, "It seems Yan Yan really likes him." At that time, I didn't understand what it meant to like someone. I just knew that being with Jianxi made me happy. My mother would gently stroke my head, saying, "Now that Yan Yan has a good friend, Mom is relieved." I didn't pick up on the hidden meaning in her words. I thought she was genuinely happy for me. I don't remember exactly when it started, but my mother's condition worsened. Every time I visited her, she could only lie in bed. She was still as gentle as ever, always smiling at me, but she gradually became paler. I thought she was sick. I asked my father to find a doctor for her, but he told me not to meddle in things, or he wouldn't let me see her anymore. I could only sneak candies into my sleeves, hoping that if my mother ate them, she would get better soon. Then, one day, my mother asked me to hide a knife and bring it with me the next time I visited. I didn't understand what she was planning to do, but she said I was a good child, and good children should listen to their parents. That night, I was suddenly jolted awake from my sleep. It was my father who had pulled me out of bed. He locked me in the confinement room. He said I was a bad child who almost killed my mother, and I wasn't allowed to see her anymore. I was locked up for a week. When I came out, I learned that my mother had tried to kill herself with the knife I had given her, but she was saved just in time. I didn't know why she wanted to die. Was it something I did wrong? But I didn't get the chance to ask. I couldn't see her anymore. All I knew was that I had almost killed her. The day I returned to school, Jianxi asked why I hadn't come to school the previous week. I ignored him. After school, he cornered me in an alley and asked what was wrong. I cried, saying I was a bad child and bad children didn't deserve to have good friends. Jianxi silently watched me cry until I was done. Then, just like my mother used to, he gently patted my head. Even if you are a bad child, I'm still your friend, always. What happened? Who said you were a bad child? I told Jianxi everything. After listening, he was quiet for a long time. Then he hugged me softly. I will protect you. After that, I never saw my mother again. Only Jianxi stayed by my side. He knew I was unhappy, so he gave me a jar. He said he would fold a paper star for me every day, and when the jar was full, he would grant me a wish. He said it would take a long time, so I should think carefully. But I had already made up my mind. I wanted to be with my mother and Jianxi forever. But before the jar was even a third full, I had already forgotten about him. It was an ordinary afternoon, and I was sitting alone in the living room, piecing together a Lego set. Suddenly, there was a noise from upstairs, and when I turned my head, I saw my mother. It had been half a year since we last met. She had lost a lot of weight, her skin was as pale as paper, and her ankles were a mess of torn flesh, though there were no chains. I stood up, and just as the word "mom" escaped my lips, I abruptly stopped in my tracks. I had forgotten. I was the bad child who had nearly caused her death. I didn't know if she still loved me. She looked flustered, said nothing, and grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the rooftop. She asked if I was willing to go with her. I asked where she was going, but she wouldn't tell me. I then asked if we could bring Jianxi with us. She stared at me for a moment, then, just like before, gently patted my head. She said, "People with good friends cannot come. Yan Yan, you have to learn to take care of yourself from now on." I nodded in confusion, but she began to cry. "I'm sorry, my darling. Mom really can't hold on any longer." She then told me to face the wall and said that if I closed my eyes and counted to 100, she would turn into a gust of wind and always stay by my side. I did as she said. The price was that I lost my mother forever. It felt like I had become the bad child once again. I fell gravely ill and after waking up, couldn't speak for a long time. A few times I saw Jianxi's figure lingering outside the window. I didn't dare go see him. I just hid under the blankets and cried. I wondered countless times, if I didn't have a good friend, would I have left with my mother without hesitation? Or perhaps, if she hadn't been afraid of me being lonely, maybe she wouldn't have left at all. I shouldn't have had a good friend. I didn't deserve to be loved. I lied to myself like this every day. During that time, I kept getting sick, always running a high fever and babbling incoherently. Eventually, when I woke up again, all I remembered was that I no longer had a mother, nor did I have a friend. I had forgotten Jianxi. After returning to school, he sought me out many times, but I only treated him as a stranger. He told me every day that he wanted to be my friend, and every day I coldly rejected him. Then the next day, I would forget about him all over again. He left no trace in my mind. Gradually, he accepted this reality, and every day after school, he would silently follow me from behind, watching me walk home. The next time I took notice of Jianxi was at Zhao Wan's 15th birthday banquet. In the lively banquet hall, everyone was flattering Zhao Wan and her mother, but Jianxi slipped away to the little garden to find me. He was still the same as before, silent and reserved like a little adult. Later, he gave me that box of butterfly specimen, and from that moment, I chose him. I thought many times about why it had to be Jianxi. I couldn't find the reason. It turned out Jianxi himself was the reason. Yet, I had always believed that Jianxi didn't love me, that marrying me was just a forced business arrangement. It wasn't until a year ago, when we attended a banquet together, that Zhao Wan, disguised as a server, hid a knife under the tray. She wanted to kill me. Amidst all those people, Jianxi was the only one who could accurately find me and push me out of harm's way. That knife plunged deep into his heart. Even as he fell, he comforted me, saying, "Yan Yan, don't be afraid." Jianxi almost died that time. Perhaps the shock of that event was too much for me, because I suddenly remembered everything. I remembered the night I had selfishly forgotten. During all those chaotic days and nights, he had been there, steadfastly guarding me, clad in armor, my knight. I watched his pale figure in the ICU, helpless as pain spread through my entire body. It seemed I had always been a burden to the people who loved me. When I was young, I was a burden to my mother. Even though she was in so much pain, she stayed in that Zhao family for my sake. I only thought about wanting to see her, but I never understood the sorrow behind her every gentle smile. When I grew up, I became a burden to Jianxi. He was so good, so remarkable, yet he almost lost his life because of me, and I couldn't even remember a single good thing about him. I am a burden. Jianxi's injuries were getting better day by day. I had practically moved into the hospital room with him. He always wanted to see me, and I didn't want to leave him either. He never asked why I had forgotten, nor did he ask how I suddenly remembered. He said he didn't care. What he loved was me, just as I was. Over the past 5 years, he had said, "I love you" countless times, but I would still forget it the next day. That time was the longest I had ever remembered, lasting until a week after Jianxi had recovered and been discharged from the hospital. Then, I forgot again, and this time things seemed to have gotten worse. 2 conflicting thoughts appeared in my mind. One was to forget everything, to not care about anything, as long as I could stay with Jianxi. The other was to remember everything and feel like a burden, wanting only to escape. I kept struggling between these 2 thoughts. Some days were good, others were bad. My mind constantly wavered between clarity and confusion. I saw Jianxi being worn down, exhausted from all the suffering I put him through, and I desperately wanted to set him free. Perhaps I could become like the wind, accompanying him in a different way. But he wasn't willing to let me go. Yan Yan was sick. I had thought that her remembering everything meant she was getting better. But I didn't expect that, in fact. She was getting worse. Before, she only couldn't remember me, couldn't remember that I loved her. But ever since Zhao Wan appeared, she often exhibited unconscious, self-destructive tendencies. During the day, she showed no signs of anything unusual. I only needed to follow her lead and play the role of a husband in an arranged marriage, neither too warm nor too distant. Rigid and serious, with no feelings for her. But at night, after she fell asleep, she often got up in the middle of the night, unconsciously wandering to various places. The rooftop was her most frequent destination. At times like these, she would also have brief moments of clarity, remembering me, remembering her mother, remembering everything, but always in a deeply sorrowful way. The first time I discovered her going to the rooftop, in the middle of the night, she was sitting at the edge, facing the wind. She turned around and smiled at me, saying, "It's my mother. She's come back to see me." I didn't say anything. I just gently embraced her from behind. She was silent for a long time before suddenly asking me, "Shi, you must be so tired, right? If it weren't for me, you wouldn't be so exhausted." I also wish I could become a gust of wind. At that moment, I felt a chill throughout my entire body. I didn't know what to do, didn't know how to make her understand that I wasn't tired. Whether she remembered or not, as long as she was by my side, that was enough for me. I could only gather up all the sharp objects, lock the way to the rooftop. Sometimes, I would find her squatting by the attic door. I had no choice but to open the door and take her up to the roof to feel the wind. She would curl up in my arms and say, "If only I could remember you tomorrow." This continued for nearly a year, happening more and more frequently. The most recent incident was 2 months ago. She stood in front of the bookshelf, staring at the butterfly specimen. She said, "Shi, you're like that butterfly I've trapped. How can I set you free?" I hugged her from behind, wanting to hold her with all my strength. "Yan Yan, I'm here by choice. I'm willing to be the butterfly in your palm." I had no other options but to stay with her every night. A turning point came a little over a month ago, when one of my senior sisters from university returned to the country. She worked in psychological research. I told her about Yan Yan's condition, and she said that Yan Yan was showing signs of dissociative identity disorder. One side wanted to stay with me at all costs, while the other was desperately seeking release. She recommended memory chip therapy combined with hypnosis. The chip would amplify Yan Yan's desire to be with me, suppressing her self-destructive personality. But because daytime Yan Yan didn't remember my love and didn't believe I could love her, we had to give her a reason why I would love her. Through hypnosis, we fabricated a memory, making her believe that I was the one implanted with the chip. She believed it, and her condition started improving. Before, I didn't dare to express my feelings for her often because she would always scream and lock herself in her room. The doctor said it was a stress response. She had suffered severe psychological trauma, so she had built an incredibly strong self-protection mechanism. Anything she couldn't accept or understand, she couldn't process properly and would forget it the next day. But with the memory chip, she thought all my feelings for her were driven by the chip, so she believed and accepted it. Every time I confessed my love, she could remember it. Seeing her inwardly happy but outwardly pretending to be indifferent made me so ecstatic I almost went mad. This was how my Yan Yan was supposed to be. She was meant to have the happiest life and the purest soul. She always thought that the time she gave me the umbrella was the time we met. But actually, it was earlier than that. Our families lived close to each other, so we often took the same route home. At that time, my family was on the verge of bankruptcy, and we had moved from Haicheng to Beijing. The school was new too. At first, I wasn't familiar with the way, so I followed her home, and if I walked a little further, I'd reach my place. I noticed she was always alone, but was quite good at entertaining herself. The route wasn't that long, but she always took forever to get home, because she was always busy playing rock, paper, scissors with stray cats, holding an umbrella for stray dogs, and chatting with the flowers and plants by the roadside. She was very busy. I was 2 years older than her, in a different grade, but I had heard many rumors about her. They were mostly about her family and her mother. I found it boring and didn't care about other people's family affairs, so I never got involved. That time when she gave me the umbrella, I had actually been waiting for the nanny to bring me one, but she pushed hers into my hands and ran off. I had no choice but to carry her lace-trimmed umbrella and go find her. After that, we became friends. She was always so happy, chattering nonstop, bringing me something new every day. A little noisy, but also kind of cute. If only things could have stayed that way. If possible, I wished Yan Yan could always be that little girl who played rock, paper, scissors with cats, held an umbrella for dogs, and chatted with flowers and plants, always wearing the prettiest princess dress and the cleanest smile. If she never had those things before, then I hope she can have them from now on. During our trip to Europe, Yan Yan was very happy. Everything she saw amazed her. She didn't know why we wore matching outfits. I had wanted to tell her that I wanted to make up for the romance we missed. For the moment when we both confirmed our love for each other, I wanted to hold her hand in every country, kiss her on every street, and propose to her again beneath the northern lights. But I didn't expect the unexpected to come so soon. When she collapsed into my arms, her brown eyes reflected the panic on my face. But her gaze toward me was so happy and relieved. She said, Shi, this time, it's finally my turn to protect you. Yan Yan had already been in a coma for a month. The doctor said her will to live was very weak. During that time, Wenlan had come by a few times to tell me that Yan Yan's chip had already failed. That day on the street, the moment she ran toward me, her self-destructive personality had completely overwhelmed the chip's data. Wenlan said she wanted to save me too much. Compared to real human emotions, high tech is always so fragile. Every day, I sat by her side, folding paper stars and telling her stories about the past. I told her about the stray cat she had rescued, which was later adopted by a young couple. I told her that the lace-trimmed umbrella she had given me was still sitting in the display cabinet at home. I told her that every anniversary gift had actually been carefully chosen by me. I told her how much I loved the sweet and sour ribs she made for me, and I told her that I really wanted to have a future with her. I didn't know how long I had been asleep. I only felt that both my body and mind were heavy. It turned out that right before death, people really did experience a flashback of memories, just like a revolving lantern. I saw many people. There was Zhao Wan, who had spilled dirty water on my bed but ended up crying when the snake I caught bit her. There was my stepmother, who cried and complained, only to pinch my thigh after the fact. And then there was my father, who always watched indifferently from the sidelines. I also saw my mother. She wore the same cotton dress as I remembered, smiling at me. Her ankles were delicate and white, free from chains or scars. She gently patted my head. "Mom told you before, people with good friends can't come here." I reached out my little hand and grabbed her dress. "I don't want good friends. I want to go with you, Mom." She knelt down in front of me. "Yan is a good child, and good children can't easily abandon their friends. Mom knows that Yan was very happy when you were with him, and Mom hopes Yan will always be happy." I still clung to her dress, refusing to let go. "I want to be with Mom. Mom has always been with you. Every breeze you feel is Mom hugging you." With a smile, my mother gently withdrew her dress from my grasp and pushed me forward. "Go, darling. He's calling for you." I turned back, but my mother's softly smiling figure grew more and more blurry until she completely disappeared. I cried and tried to find her, but someone kept calling my name. His voice was choked with emotion, yet filled with a deep, heart-wrenching pain. "You said that as long as I always loved you, you would always be here. You can't leave me." Zhao Yanyi. It was Jianxi. My Jianxi. He was still waiting for me to remember him. When I woke up that day, the weather was beautiful. The window was half open, and I could see the clear blue sky and the white, billowing clouds. The branches of the trees were gently swaying. Every so often, a breeze would blow into the room, ruffling Jianxi's hair. He was lying by my bedside, frowning even in his sleep. I reached out and touched his temple, and almost instantly, he grabbed my hand. When he sat up, his eyes were still dazed for a moment. I smiled at him. "Ah, Shi, it's such a nice day today. Do you want to go out and feel the breeze?" His gaze gradually focused on me, and in an instant, his eyes reddened. Yan, you've finally come back." Jianxi held me tightly. He buried his face in my neck, his hot tears trailing from my collarbone to my heart, making it tremble with emotion. Finally, I could respond to his love with my whole being. "Jianxi, I love you." After a long, dark journey through the frost and wind, I finally remembered my knight once again. He was just as radiant and dazzling as in my memories, lighting up the solitary path ahead of me. Thankfully, the frost had cleared, and though the road ahead was long, we could now walk it together. This is the end of the main story. Next is the extra part from the male lead's perspective. When my father said he was going to find me a marriage partner, I told him directly that I wouldn't marry anyone except Zhao Yanyi. He looked at me for a moment before telling me that the family preferred Zhao Wan. Even though she wasn't biologically related to the Zhao family, she was the most favored one because her mother was currently the matriarch of the Zhao family. This meant that marrying her would strengthen the business cooperation between our families. Before I could respond, my father continued to point out, "Zhao Wan is willing to marry you, but Zhao Yanyi might not be." "Yan Shi, don't complicate things." I fell silent. Yan had already forgotten the past. Would she accept a marriage based solely on business interests? While I was still pondering how to solve this, my father assumed I had accepted his proposal. He stood up and said, "Tomorrow, arrange a meal with Zhao Wan. You two should meet more often." I stood up as well, looking him straight in the eyes. "I won't meet her for a meal. The only person I will marry is Zhao Yanyi. You know me well. No one can force me to do something I don't want to do. Perhaps you should also consider finding another heir." Although my wings weren't fully grown, I had already secured a position within the G family business. If I cut ties at this stage, it would deal a severe blow to the G family. My father looked at me for a while, said nothing, and left. Before any decision was made about the arranged marriage, I went on a business trip to the US. When I returned, my father told me that I would be engaged in 3 months to Zhao Yanyi. Only then did I realize that she was willing. Despite forgetting the past, she still chose me. This conclusion made me overjoyed. A month before the engagement, at a dinner party, I planned to find her. But I was kept occupied by a business partner discussing a project. I was distracted the whole time, my gaze constantly following her movements. She slipped into the lounge. Finally, I found an excuse to slip away. When I caught up with her, I saw her pour the liquid from the wine glass into a small storage bag and carefully place it into her handbag. Then she went upstairs to the second floor of the hotel. She crouched beside a room door, listening to something. That sneaky behavior reminded me of her childhood. Every time I waited for her after school, I never knew from which direction she would pop out. She would always run up to me with a grin, grabbing my school uniform and saying, "Brother Ashi, let's go home together." For a moment, I felt dazed. The playful, mischievous version of her had been gone for a long time. So when she stumbled into my arms, I thought she had returned. She pushed me into the fire escape, her eyes clear and bright. She tugged at my tie playfully and said, "Oh my, it's my fiancé." What a coincidence. Just as I was about to speak, she reached out to cover my mouth, soft but cold. "Don't make a sound." She tilted her head, listening to the commotion outside, her eyes darting around excitedly. I lowered my gaze and watched her, suddenly thinking that this version of her was quite good too. She had forgotten all the unpleasant things. Even if the price of forgetting her troubles meant she had to forget me too, I didn't mind. The noise outside grew louder, and I heard her stepmother's shrill screams along with a variety of chaotic sounds. Satisfied, she let go of me. I smiled and asked her, "What mischief did you get into this time?" She shrugged, just giving them a taste of their own medicine. I took off my jacket and draped it over her shoulders, then gently held her wrist through the fabric. "The moon is nice tonight. Want to go for a ride?" She took my hand without hesitation, her smile bright and mischievous. "Deal. We're not going home tonight.